Welcome to another episode of Walking the Path of Grief with me, Di Atherton, death doula, grief and life guide. And in this podcast, I chat about anything related to grief, death and dying, which I know can sound morbid, but the reality is death, dying, and going through grief, experiencing grief is a natural part of the life cycle. And it's my passion and mission to normalize talking about them and helping people to understand how grief shows up and how it's different for all of us, and no two people will have the same experiences. There is also, unfortunately, no manual or rule book for grief, and by sharing information in this podcast, I hope in some way, if you are experiencing grief or you're supporting someone who is grieving, that you'll find some useful tools and tips here. So today's episode has come about after I received an email this week from a very dear friend of mine who let me know that her husband, who is in his early 80s, it has been suspected that he has pancreatic cancer, although he's declined to have any procedures or anything like that. As he says, he doesn't want to be poked and prodded. Quite honestly, I agree with him. Like, what is the point at the age of 80 to go through what can be a lot of suffering when treating illnesses like cancer? And this is purely my opinion. It was also his choice. Anyway, there was one sentence that jumped out at me from her email, and she said, "I don't know how to let him go." And he's hanging in there because he knows this. And it is something that really does happen. If someone is reaching the end of life for whatever reason, whether it's just a natural ending or it's through illness or accident or whatever, we can hold on because we don't want to leave our loved ones. You can also have the situation where people can hold on to someone who wants to let go but can't. And you often find that is what happens when someone is in the active dying process, that they hold on and hold on. Everyone's expecting them to go, but in reality, the family doesn't want them to go. And you will find that what happens is when the family goes out to have a meal or grab a cup of coffee while they're away, the person does actually die. And it's a very real thing, is people holding on. So this couple have been married for almost 40 years. And last night, I listened to a beautiful podcast on the writer C.S. Lewis. And he wrote a book called A Grief Observed, when he wrote this book after his wife died. And he says, "No one ever told me grief felt so like fear." And that really got me thinking, because there is a lot of fear when we have a loved one who is approaching end of life. When the person, so say for example, they have cancer and they're going through all the treatments, a lot of time and energy for the family is spent caring for them in between. You know, the effects of chemo can be really hectic on the human body. So much time and energy is spent caring for the person, dealing with the side effects of whatever treatment it is that they're having. But it's when that stops, or in the quiet moments, or in the early hours of the morning when you can't sleep, and you start thinking about life without that person, and you get this fear. And I felt this fear when it was the Saturday night. So my husband John died in the early hours of the Wednesday morning, the 19th of June, 2019. But on the Sunday before, the Saturday night, it was winter in South Africa. It was very cold. He'd been sick for a week with pneumonia. His heart was failing. And he'd stopped eating, and he was just having green tea. And I used to make a flask of green tea, and then I would take it up to him and he would just sip it throughout the day. But I walked into the bedroom that night and he was sitting on the side of the bed. He was so terribly thin. And he was looking at me, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking through me, if that made sense. And I said to him, babes, please get into bed. You know, it's really cold. And he didn't say anything. He didn't respond. He just looked at me. But he wasn't looking at me. I felt the sense that I got was he was looking at eternity. I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but it's exactly what I felt. He was looking at eternity. And in that moment, this enormous rush of fear hit me. And I was like, this is it. I'm faced with the unimaginable. Because let's be honest, with our partners, husbands, wives, long-time life partners, whoever it is, moms and dads, we expect them. There's a part of us that thinks they will go on forever. Like we cannot even get our heads around a life without them. And when you've built a lifetime with somebody and all that life entails, there is that moment when this fear just hits you like a ton of bricks. And I remember like throwing the blanket over him and shouting at him, which I was just so afraid, so unsure of what to do in this new space. Threw the blanket over him and said, well, if you want to freeze to death, like be my guest, something along those lines. And I left the room, went into the lounge, and I howled. There's no other way to describe it. It wasn't a sob, it was a howl, because the realization and the fear hit me that he's going. I knew in that moment that he was going to die. And I was terrified. I couldn't, I'd known this man since I was 23. I had just turned 60. I didn't know life without him, and it terrified me. And when I heard this on this podcast last night of him saying, nobody told me that grief was so akin to fear, I was like, that's exactly what it is. That fear of how do I do life without that person. You can't even get your head around it at that stage, which is absolutely normal. Even people who are prepared for somebody's dying, they are terminally ill, it's coming. There is still that moment when it actually happens that it all just kind of crowds in on you, and it's like, my goodness, I'm alone. My life somehow has to continue without this person in it. And every now and again, I get woken up in the early hours of the morning and get the urge to write something. I don't know why they can't pick normal office hours, but anyway, it normally happens between 1 and 3. And shortly before I was going to do a grief retreat a couple of years ago, I woke up and had the urge to get my paper and my pen and notebook. And this is what I wrote. Grief is the passage. It's the journey to rebirth. It's the womb space that allows us to fully immerse in the pain so that we can be reborn. This is the human experience. Grief is felt. It is beyond words. We cannot describe it. It is the silent space where emotions arise. Everything dies. Everything has to die. and the soul chooses that moment. The womb space of grief is the rebirth into a new reality, the space where we find the strength to face the new reality, however it looks for us. And I remember sitting and reading that back after I'd written it, and I was like, wow, the grief is the womb space. So if you think that when a baby is conceived, it sits in the womb for 9 months as it grows and gets all the attributes and whatever it needs to pop out into the world. At the other end of it, there is that womb space when we say goodbye to someone. That sense of, it's the space, the silence where we allow emotions to arise. And I think that's what scares us, or one of the things that scares us a lot with grief is the enormity of the emotions. Like, there really isn't much to compare it with in the day-to-day sort of goings on of life. I mean, you can have jubilation, you can have excitement, you can have joy. Some people do experience those rare moments of just like unbridled joy or passion. But on the other side of the spectrum, and of course being human, we have both sides. You know, we have the grief and we have the joy. But grief emotions can be so physical, or they can affect us mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like, they are so big. In fact, the word grief, I think we've made the word grief very small. And possibly that's why we kind of dismiss its impact on us, or the length of time that it will show up in our lives. You know, oh, she's grieving. Well, you know, that she'll get over it. It's grief. But there's so much more than just that word. It encapsulates so much that we can't really have an understanding of until we go through it. And when I wrote that and I read it afterwards, I thought, we don't give ourselves enough time as grievers to be in that womb space, because the nature of the world around us is move on, get on with it. Okay, you've had a day, a week, a month, 6 months, a year. You know, the average to even start feeling remotely like yourself again is 2 years. And that doesn't mean you're over it. It's kind of at the 2-year mark where the edges of that bitter pain begin to soften. You find there are times that go by where you don't feel as heart sore. You might even laugh a little bit. But these emotions are so big, we don't actually know what to do with them. And, you know, that one sentence, I don't know how to let him go. The way to let someone go is to face the unimaginable, to sit with, my husband is dying, my wife is dying, my child is dying. Like, what does that mean? What does that feel like for me? And allowing those feelings. And also to talk to the person. You know, I've witnessed situations where someone has been really sick, like they are going to die. There is no question. And the family has completely ignored that. They have forbidden anyone to talk about it, even to the person who has in this one particular case, it was cancer. We don't talk about it. She'll be fine. And she wasn't fine. She passed. She died. And I just think of so much is lost if we don't have those conversations. So talk about your fears. I'm afraid for what life is going to look like without you. I don't know how to be without you. And that is a huge part of the grieving process, is the loss of identity. Like, you were going to become a widow or a widower or an orphan if both of your parents die. You're an orphan. You don't have those loving parent arms to run into anymore. And let's face it, it doesn't matter how old we are, we need our mom, or we need the wise ear of our father. And when we don't have that, it's a really deep loss. I believe that that womb space stays with us. It's a place that we can retreat to when the loss, the grief flares up, as it does at certain times. Last year I really struggled on my wedding anniversary, which was Easter Monday last year. The years before that, they were fine. Last year I really felt it. Christmas, I really felt it, my husband's absence. There are other Christmases I don't even think about it. So I don't know when it's going to show up for me. So how do you let someone go? You share, you talk, you have the big conversations. Talk about the good times. Talk about what you appreciated about them. The legacy that they're leaving for you. What you're going to miss. Very often when someone does die, it's the little things that we miss, about them, the little habits, routines, or rituals that we've created. So it's about letting go, is going, okay, I have to go into this process of saying goodbye. Do you need to take photos? Do you need to make videos? Like what will it be for you? How will you support yourself in this transition? And also saying to the person, when you have these conversations, like, I'm going to hate it. I'm going to hate you for leaving me. I'm probably going to be pissed off with you, but I know that this is the reality of what we face. So if you are in that situation, or someone who is facing this, don't be afraid to listen to what they have to say. We are so scared of death and dying. I don't know why it became such a taboo subject, and considered morbid. But it is an ending. It's the end. It is the last chapter. There is no getting away from it. But it's how you face it. So if you think that if you are in that situation where you're about to say goodbye to someone, what does your womb space look like? What do you need to put in there? Who needs to be in there with you? And I know that there are people who have a calling to do this kind of work, or to support people who are going through grief, who are grieving. And it's you don't have to do anything. You don't have to fix anything. You don't even have to know what to say. You just show up. I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here. If you want to talk, I'm all ears. If you need a hug, I'm there. If you need someone to sit with you while you sleep, I'm here. And it's that support that is so important for them. But I really encourage you, if you are facing any kind of situation like this, is have the conversations. Talk to the person. Journal your own fears. If you find it really impossible to talk to them, write them a letter. Let them read it before they go. Because it's still, and I know I've mentioned this before, it saddens me at funerals when people speak up and they sing the deceased's praises and what an amazing person they were. And I always wondered, did you ever tell them that when they were alive? So here's a thought. If you know that person has touched many lives, reach out and ask people to give you a short testimonial of what they've meant to them, of what they've done for them, or whatever it is. Put it together in a beautiful book. So that person knows that their life mattered, that they're leaving behind memories where they've touched people's lives. Get the family together, do videos. There's one thing I'm grateful for with John is in May, before he died, so he died in the June. It was the weekend, I think, of the 24th of May. And he was off his meds. He'd made the decision because of the side effects. He was back to his old self, and we had the kids and the grandkids. Our house was full of laughter. The grandkids had come from overseas, a couple of them, and our house was full of laughter and fun and talking. We've got wonderful photos. And it was shortly after that that his health started to deteriorate. But I will always remember that weekend where he was his old self. And the beers were flowing and the wine was flowing and the fire was going. And we just chatted and laughed and joked. And he was so happy when he went to bed that night. Like, he was complete. And yeah, a couple of weeks later, he was gone. So just remember that the grief is the womb space where you get to feel all these emotions and those fears. And it is a rebirth into a life, whatever that new life is going to bring to you. So people often ask me what I do, and one of the things that I do is, as a grief guide, is support people who are facing this. And you're welcome to reach out. I have different ways that I do it. But yes, you don't have to do it alone. So just remember that grief is the womb space. Stay in it as long as you need to. And reach out if you're needing support. See you next time.